Welcome to our channel. Today, let's explore the life and career of Howard Winchester Hawks, a genius director, producer, and screenwriter who left a lasting impact on the golden era of classic Hollywood. Howard Winchester Hawks has often been described as enigmatic, cold, and authoritarian. Renowned for his films, Hawks frequently explored intense relationships between men and shared similar bonds with many of his male stars. He was one of the first directors in cinema history to create strong female characters with assertive. He also directed one of the earliest examples of a female buddy movie, featuring Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell. So how much can we uncover about this mysterious figure, once hailed as the greatest American artist? Let's take a closer look at the life of Hawks. Hawks was born in 1896 in Goshen, Indiana, into a wealthy family. He had a privileged childhood, often indulged by his maternal grandfather. Instead of focusing on his studies, he spent his time racing cars and flying planes. Hawks attended prestigious schools, including the Polytechnic Primary School. In 1911, after the tragic death of Hawks's youngest sister Helen, his family moved to Glendora to escape the memories of their loss. When he grew up, his family's social status helped him gain admission to Phillips Exeter Academy and later to Cornell University, so he struggled academically at both institutions. Hawks became more interested in gambling and alcohol than in his studies, but his love for auto racing led him to meet director Victor Fleming. Hawks recalled that he was simply looking for a job during summer vacation. A contact at Paramount helped him secure a position in the prop room, which turned out to be Fleming, who was a protege of director Alan Dwan. While working in the props department at Paramount, Hawks demonstrated a talent for problem-solving, earning recognition from industry leaders like Dwan and Cecil B. DeMille. However, when the United States entered World War I, his academic and film aspirations were interrupted as he enlisted in the military. He became a flying instructor, but he saw no action due to the war ending before he could be deployed. After the war, Hawks was eager to establish himself in Hollywood, not as a props department worker, but as a director. His financial backing enabled him to lend money to the struggling Jack L. Warner, who, in gratitude, offered Hawks a chance to direct some comedies. This opportunity led to Hawks' first significant directing role with The Road to Glory in 1926. The film reflected his personal experiences, presenting a dramatic story about auto racing. He followed this with successes like Fig Leaves, a comedy, and Paid to Love, which was notably influenced by F.W. Murnau's German expressionist style. Hawks later remarked about Paid to Love, "It wasn't my type of stuff. At least I got it over with quickly." You know, the idea of wanting the camera to do those things, now the camera is someone's eyes. In 1928, A Girl in Every Port marked the moment Hawks discovered his directorial style. He began to establish themes and character types that would recur throughout his career. The casting of Louise Brooks as the strong-willed Marie highlighted Hawks's preference for bold and unconventional female characters. He praised Brooks, saying, "I hired Louise Brooks because she was very sure of herself. She's analytical, very feminine, and confident in doing what she wants. She was ahead of her time with that hairstyle, and she's a rebel. I like her. I like rebels." On May 30, 1928, Hawks married Athol Shearer, a Canadian-American actress who was the sister of the well-known movie star Norma Shearer and Douglas Shearer, an MGM sound engineer. Her film career in the eastern United States consisted of small, uncredited roles in only 3 movies. After moving to California, Athol stopped pursuing acting and was unable to achieve the same level of success as her sister Norma at MGM. A significant challenge during her acting career was her ongoing health issues, particularly her undiagnosed bipolar disorder. These struggles ultimately hindered her career. If she expected Hawks, who often appeared distant, to be a source of support, she was likely mistaken. The Air Circus was Howard Hawks' first film focused on aviation. By 1928, Charles Lindbergh had become a major international celebrity, and the film Wings was a big hit that year. To capitalize on the public's interest in aviation, Fox purchased Hawks' original screenplay for the Air Circus. This movie presented a fresh take on the buddy dynamics seen in Hawks' earlier work, A Girl in Every Port. Filming occurred from April to June 1928. Once again, Hawks showcased his recurring theme of platonic relationships between men, which were not romantic in nature, but centered around friendship, based on duty and masculine ideals. Often, these relationships were defined in contrast to female characters, who typically embodied masculine traits as well. The film was released in September 1928, achieving moderate success, though it is now considered a lost film. Trent's Last Case was Hawks's adaptation of the 1913 detective novel by British author E.C. Bentley. Hawks greatly admired the book, considering it one of the finest detective stories ever written, and was eager to make it his first sound film. He cast Raymond Griffith as the lead character, Philip Trent, despite Griffith's soft-spoken voice, which was a result of exposure to poison gas during World War I. Hawks believed that Griffith's unique voice would actually enhance the film. However, after filming only a few scenes, Fox Studio halted production, insisting on making a silent version due to concerns about Griffith's voice and legal issues. The film was completed with a musical score and sound effects, but without any dialogue, and it never premiered in the United States. Its short run in England received poor reviews. Although the film was considered lost until the mid-1970s, it was finally shown in the US during a retrospective of Hawks' work in 1974. Hawks attended this screening, where he unsuccessfully sought to destroy the only existing copy. Hawks's relationship with Fox ended on a negative note in May 1929, concluding his long-term commitments to any major film studio. By 1930, the film industry was facing significant challenges due to the shift from silent films to sound films, known as talkies. This transition caused many actors and directors to lose their careers. Studios began seeking stage performers, whom they believed could better adapt to the new demands of sound films. Despite having 14 years of experience and a history of successful films, Hawks found himself needing to prove his worth to the studios once again. His departure from Fox was contentious, which negatively impacted his reputation. However, Hawks was used to standing up to studio executives during disputes. After unsuccessful negotiations, he revitalized his career in 1930 with his first sound film, The Dawn Patrol. This film focused on a group of British pilots undertaking dangerous bombing missions over Germany, highlighting their strong camaraderie and reliance on alcohol to cope with their perilous circumstances. Hawks, who often fancied himself a storyteller and a self-promoter, claimed that he narrated the story for The Dawn Patrol. He also stated that he paid John Monk Saunders to be credited as the writer, supposedly because he lacked experience in screenwriting. However, this claim may be an exaggeration, as is often the case with Hawks's self-representations. Filming began in late February 1930, around the same time that Howard Hughes finished his own World War I aviation film, Hell's Angels. Hughes's project had been in production since September 1927 and progressed quickly. In a strategic move, Hawks started recruiting aviation experts and cameramen who had previously worked for Hughes, including Elmer Dyer, Harry Reynolds, and Ira Reid. When Hughes realized that his talents were being recruited for a rival film, he tried to sabotage the Dawn Patrol using various tactics. He even hired a spy, who was quickly caught and filed a copyright lawsuit against First National, the studio producing Hawks' film. By late 1930, however, Hughes dropped the lawsuit after developing a friendship with Hawks during the legal proceedings. Hawks later claimed, possibly embellishing, that Hughes decided to dismiss the lawsuit after they played a friendly round of golf, where Hawks scored 71 and Hughes scored 72. The film premiered in July, breaking box office records during its first week at the Winter Garden Theater in New York. It quickly became one of the biggest successes of 1930, enhancing Hawks's reputation in the film industry. Hawks found great joy in creating his next movie, The Criminal Code, largely because of his partnership with Walter Huston, whom he considered the greatest actor he ever worked with. Constance Cummings, who was cast as Huston's daughter at the last minute, also admired him. She observed that Hawks spent a lot of time with Huston, which made her feel somewhat sidelined among the predominantly male cast and crew. The film premiered in January 1931 and received a positive response, even though it was banned in Chicago. Hawks also faced censorship challenges during this project, which would become even more significant in his next film. In 1930, Hughes hired director Howard Hawks to work on Scarface, a gangster film inspired by the infamous Chicago mobster Al Capone. Although the film was completed in September 1931, its release was delayed due to the strict censorship of the Hays Code. The code disapproved of the film's depiction of violence, ethnic stereotypes, corrupt officials, and daring criminals, elements that the Hays office wanted to portray as non-existent in American society. Hawks and Hughes spent over a year negotiating and making compromises with the Hays office regarding the film's content. Ultimately, Scarface was released in 1932, following other significant gangster films such as The Public Enemy and Little Caesar. It's intriguing to consider how different the original version of Scarface might have been before the Hays office intervened, but the final film remained dynamic and impressive, captivating audiences in the early 1930s. The movie also initiated a successful 20-year collaboration between Hawks and screenwriter Ben Hecht, who became both a close friend and a frequent partner. Hawks often claimed he consulted real gangsters while making the film, but these claims contribute to the lore surrounding his filmmaking rather than serving as verified facts. The one about Capone adoring the film and possessing a personal copy ought to be taken with a grain of salt, especially since Capone was incarcerated by the time the movie was released. More credible is Hecht's account of a visit from a couple of Capone's henchmen who came asking about Howard Hughes's intentions with the movie. Hecht reassured them by describing Hughes as just a sucker with the money, implying they were no threat to Capone. Scarface is still considered a classic representation of Chicago's gangster culture in the 1920s. It features a sharp and clever story about the rise and fall of a gangster. After Scarface, Hawks chose to distance himself from the legal issues surrounding censorship, leaving Hughes to handle those problems. He returned to First National and collaborated with producer Darryl F. Zanuck on a new film inspired by his childhood love of car racing. Together with Seton Miller, he co-wrote The Crowd Roars, marking their 8th and final collaboration. The film included real race car drivers, such as Billy Arnold, the winner of the 1930 Indianapolis 500, and was successful upon its release in 1932. Hawks directed the film Tiger Shark, which starred Edward G. Robinson as a tuna fisherman. By 1933, he had signed a contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios for 3 films, starting with Today We Live, a World War I story based on a narrative by William Faulkner. Faulkner would go on to collaborate with Hawks on several films in the following years. However, Hawks faced interference from the studio with his next MGM projects, The Prizefighter and The Lady and the biographical Viva Villa, which led him to leave his MGM contract early. In 1934, Hawks moved to Columbia Pictures to direct 20th Century, his first screwball comedy. The film featured John Barrymore and his distant cousin Carole Lombard. It was adapted from a play by Hecht and Charles MacArthur. It was released in the same year as Frank Capra's It Happened One Night, and is regarded as a key film in the screwball comedy genre. The following year, Hawks worked on the film Barbary Coast alongside G. Robinson and Miriam Hopkins. In 1936, Howard Hawks could have enjoyed a successful year with multiple movie releases, an upcoming child, and an income comparable to the top directors in Hollywood. However, he faced a tumultuous period marked by both professional and personal problems, largely due to his own stubbornness, self-centeredness, and emotional detachment. This time revealed Hawks's rigid behavior and his tendency to abandon difficult situations without considering how they affected others. While some people might respect his steadfast principles, others viewed his actions as emotionally immature or even callous. Hawks's troubled home life drove him to focus on work and gambling. The news of Athol's pregnancy was not entirely welcomed, especially with their son David, who was 6, and Athol's 10-year-old son Peter from a previous relationship. Hawks had doubts about the future of his marriage, which was complicated by Athol's ongoing mental health struggles. Despite his frequent absences, Athol clung to the hope that having another child might save their fragile marriage. Meanwhile, she was unaware that Hawks was involved in an affair with showgirl and dancer Mary Lou Holtz. Hawks decided to work again with his rival, Sam Goldwyn, mainly for financial reasons. Goldwyn offered a substantial weekly salary of $3,500, which was a risky choice for Hawks. Although Goldwyn was known for being a tough businessman, Hawks believed he could outsmart him this time. However, he quickly realized that Goldwyn had acquired the rights to Edna Ferber's novel, Come and Get It, and assigned Hawks to direct it. Aware of Goldwyn's strong influence over directors, Hawks approached the project with caution and had serious doubts about the story's appeal and potential success. Hawks later recounted that his departure came after he tried to propose some new scenes to his producer. Goldwyn was impressed and asked who wrote them. When Hawks admitted that he was the author, Goldwyn reacted explosively, insisting on a clear separation between writers and directors. Hawks claimed he resigned immediately, while Goldwyn insisted he had fired him. The exact truth is unclear, but according to Hawks' secretary, he simply walked off the set, packed his belongings, and left without informing his cast or crew. On May 20th, Athol welcomed their daughter, Barbara, into the world. However, during that week, Hawks was absent as he went on a trip to Mexico. His time was also consumed by his new lady, the stunning Frances Farmer. Columbia Pictures, led by Sam Briskin, quickly contacted Hawks after his disagreement with Goldwyn. Hawks was immediately interested in the project Gunga Din, which was based on a novel by Rudyard Kipling. He was excited about its adventurous and masculine themes, which matched his own style. By late October, Hawks had developed the storyline and part of the script for this new project. Meanwhile, Athol took an unusual step by confronting Hawks in New York about their troubled marriage. Hawks typically avoided direct emotional discussions, so Athol's assertiveness was unlikely to have a positive outcome. In fact, she was struggling with serious mental health issues and was seeking comfort. Convinced that their marriage was beyond saving, Hawks coldly rejected her shortly after she arrived. Athol was heartbroken by his indifferent reaction, leading her into a deep emotional crisis. After returning to Los Angeles, where she had undergone evaluations and was mistakenly diagnosed with schizophrenia, she was admitted to Lacinia's Sanitarium in Pasadena. During her stay, she underwent electric shock therapy, as advised by her doctors, with Hawks overseeing the approval of the treatment. However, the results were not promising. Medical professionals expressed doubts about her recovery. They alerted Hawks that she was likely to experience recurring episodes of crises, followed by temporary improvements. The severity of her condition indicated a potential complete loss of her sense of self, necessitating the strongest treatment options available. Hawks agreed with the medical recommendations and supported the treatment plan from a distance. As Athol struggled with her illness, the responsibility of caring for their children, especially young Barbara, increasingly fell to Hawks' parents. Norma Shearer, who was expected to support her sister, was dealing with her own significant crisis following the unexpected death of her husband, Irving Thalberg. This left Athol largely isolated in her battle against her mental health issues, which were misdiagnosed and treated with some of the most daunting therapies of the 1930s, while her husband remained emotionally distant. In 1938, Howard Hawks directed the screwball comedy Bringing Up Baby for RKO Pictures. Although Carole Lombard was considered for the quirky role of Daisy, Katharine Hepburn was always the top choice for Susan, despite concerns about her box office appeal and high salary demands. As production continued, the film's cost soared to $1 million, which was 40% over the already generous budget. A significant portion of these additional expenses was due to contractual obligations to the lead actors, which resulted in penalties when the shooting schedule ran over the planned timeline. When Bringing Up Baby was released, it underperformed at the box office, leading RKO to sever ties with director Hawks due to the film's financial failure. However, over time, it has come to be regarded as one of Hawks' best films. The initial poor performance was attributed to several factors, including its sophisticated humor, the intellectual characteristics of its characters, a lack of genuine romance, and unusually dark lighting for a comedy. Hawks later reflected on the film's weaknesses, admitting that it suffered from having only eccentric characters and no relatable ones. He learned from this experience and promised not to make the same mistake again. One night at the Clover Club on the Sunset Strip, a popular venue for Hollywood's elite, Hawks noticed Albert Cubby Broccoli with a stunning young woman he didn't recognize. Curious, Hawks asked for an introduction and met Nancy Gross, known as Slim Keith, who was a striking 21-year-old. Aware of Hawks's reputation and impressed by his presence and style, Slim agreed to go on a date with him. However, she was surprised when the 42-year-old man with gray hair introduced his 3 children and revealed that he was married. Slim was even more taken aback when Hawks explained that his wife was mentally ill and living in a facility, prompting her to consider leaving. Despite this, Slim chose to stay, and she and Hawks began a serious relationship. Hawks spent 3 years finalizing his divorce from Athol, a process complicated by Athol's mental competence status. Although Athol had not been legally declared insane, Hawks found a way to proceed with the divorce. During this time, Hawks and Slim were openly seen together, traveling and socializing without hiding their relationship. While Slim officially lived with her mother, Hawks's career began a transformative phase thanks to his relationship with Slim, leading to a highly productive and creative period in his filmmaking. Throughout their 8-year relationship, Hawks directed 8 films, including notable classics like Only Angels Have Wings and Red River, which received both critical acclaim and commercial success. This period is often considered one of the most remarkable times for artistic and commercial achievement in Hollywood history. Critics from the 1950s onward have particularly highlighted Only Angels Have Wings as a significant piece in Hawks' body of work. The film's vibrant and romantic qualities were clearly influenced by Hawks' deepening love for Slim, who was outgoing, playful, and strong, traits that starkly contrasted with Athol. Ernest Hemingway was captivated by Slim as soon as he saw her. He encountered her while Hawks was trying to convince the famous author to write screenplays for Hollywood. Although Hawks tried to persuade him, Hemingway was reluctant to get involved with the studio system, known for its strict creative limitations. Afterward, Hawks continued his partnership with Howard Hughes and began working on his next project. Hawks bought a beautiful 105-acre property located in a gently sloped canyon near Victor Fleming's home, along Moraga Drive off SVA Boulevard in the Santa Monica Mountains foothills. His marriage to Athol ended on July 24, 1940. Under pressure from her family and doctors, she agreed to the divorce. The settlement took over a year to complete, resulting in Hawks paying Athol $1,000 a month in support and gaining full custody of their children, including Athol's son from a previous marriage, Peter. Sergeant York received 12 Academy Award nominations, competing against strong contenders like Citizen Kane and John Ford's How Green Was My Valley, which ultimately won the Oscars for Best Picture and Best Director. This film marked Hawks' only Oscar nomination. During its release in the fall, it quickly became the top film in the country, breaking box office records and becoming a significant cultural phenomenon. The film also sparked important political discussions in Washington, D.C. Conservative isolationists and anti-war senators, upset by Hollywood's perceived push for U.S. involvement in the war, initiated highly publicized hearings through an interstate commerce subcommittee. These hearings examined what they argued was a subtle promotion of pro-war messages in Hollywood films, particularly those depicting Germany as a threat to American life and advocating support for Britain. Attacking the film industry was an effective way to attract media attention. But as Sergeant York gained popularity, editorial writers nationwide began using the film to criticize conservative senators and promote pro-war sentiments. They argued that the movie, which portrayed a religious pacifist's moral journey toward accepting war, effectively countered the senators' objections. As a result, the hearings lost steam, and the United States intensified its war preparations. Many weddings faced disruptions, and Hawks and Slim's wedding was also affected by a significant historical event, the attack on Pearl Harbor. Their wedding was set for December 11th, coinciding with Hawks's career peak and the upcoming release of Ball of Fire. However, after the December 7th attack shifted the nation's focus to war, Slim insisted that their wedding go ahead as planned. Just 4 days later, after their honeymoon, Hawks learned that many of his colleagues, including Jimmy Stewart, Daryl Zanuck, and John Ford, had already enlisted in the military. Ironically, even though he directed the pro-war hit Sergeant York, Hawks began to have doubts about the U.S. war efforts and later expressed concerns that President Roosevelt might have known about the Pearl Harbor attack in advance. Despite these doubts, Hawks was persuaded to direct Air Force, another successful wartime film. Eventually, Hawks and Slim and their family moved into what Lauren Bacall described as the most beautiful house she had ever seen. Hawks's partner, Christian Nyby, commented that Hawks saw Slim as his ideal of the perfect woman, and whatever Slim lacked, Hawks found in Bacall. Interestingly, it was Slim who introduced Lauren Bacall to Hawks, opening the way to her illustrious acting career. After the huge success of Casablanca, Warner Brothers wanted Humphrey Bogart to play a romantic lead again. This time, Hawks was chosen to direct, and he decided to pair Bogart with the young actress Lauren Bacall, who not only became a big star, but also left a deep mark on Bogart's life. Before, Hawks made multiple attempts to arrange a meeting between Ernest Hemingway and William Faulkner. Despite their prominence as literary giants, both writers repeatedly declined. As a result, their closest collaboration was through the film To Have and Have Not, where Hawks directed and enlisted Faulkner to adapt Hemingway's story. Although there were high expectations for the film, it did not reach the legendary status of Casablanca, which Hawks claimed to have handed over to Michael Curtiz. Nonetheless, the production was known for its enjoyable and relaxed atmosphere, as well as the off-screen romance between Bogart and Bacall, which contributed to their strong on-screen chemistry. Bacall viewed Hawks as both impressive and mysterious, feeling a combination of respect and anxiety in his presence. Unlike her friendships with other actors such as Gary Cooper, Cary Grant, or John Wayne, Hawks's relationship with Bogart was unique. Prior to filming, Hawks and Bogart barely knew each other, held different political beliefs, and had different personal interests. Bogart did not share Hawks' enthusiasm for motorcycles, hunting, or sports. As filming began, it quickly became clear that Bogart and Bacall were developing a romantic relationship, which displeased Hawks. He had hoped to transform Bacall into his dedicated protege, but decided to use their chemistry to enhance the film instead. Hawks experienced a complicated mix of annoyance, jealousy, and wounded pride as Bacall's focus shifted to Bogart. Bacall admitted to feeling consistently intimidated by Hawks, stating, "I always was nervous around him. He was always very intimidating." She recognized that Hawks had a crush on her, describing it as his entire fantasy. This dynamic shaped her journey to stardom and influenced her feelings. However, she did not reciprocate Hawks' affections. She found him too distant and conservative compared to the free-spirited Bogart. Slim was the one who discovered Bacall, and she closely observed Hawks. Bacall noticed that Hawks admired Slim more for her beauty and elegance than out of genuine love. She also felt that there was no playfulness or attraction between them, and recognized that Slim knew about Hawks' affair with Dolores Moran, a woman Slim mockingly called Dollar Ass. Additionally, Hawks had a brief fling with Dorothy Davenport, a tall brunette extra who resembled Slim. Despite the personal issues surrounding Hawks, the romance between Bogart and Bacall brought excitement to the filming process. Hawks was looking for another project to cast Bogart and Bacall, and chose Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep. This novel, featuring themes such as infomania, homosexuality, police corruption, and unpunished murder, posed a significant censorship challenge for Warner Brothers. It was the kind of film that would have made Will Hayes and his successor, Joseph Breen, very uneasy. Nevertheless, Hawks persuaded Jack Warner that he could write a script that would cleverly avoid the censor's strict oversight, which led Warner to approve the project. The production of The Big Sleep brought back the lively spirit reminiscent of the early days of To Have and Have Not, but this energy masked the underlying tensions. Bacall was troubled by Bogart's chaotic personal life and his choice to stay with him. This caused her anxiety, making her visibly shake during scenes where she had to light cigarettes or pour drinks. She relied on director Hawks for support, which helped boost his confidence in having influence over her. Despite the strain, Bogart's love for Bacall remained strong, and he was determined to be with her. At the same time, he was dealing with the emotional challenges posed by his estranged and confrontational wife, Mayo Method, leading to sleepless nights and heavy drinking. The film provided a chance for the couple to collaborate closely again, reigniting the undeniable chemistry between them. Their intense roles reflected their struggle with the pain of being deeply in love but separated from each other. Despite the personal challenges Bogart faced, director Hawks held him in high regard and ensured he was featured in every scene. Hawks appreciated Bogart's unique charm, noting that few actors could consistently dominate the screen without overstaying their welcome. However, the ongoing drama between the leading actors eventually became too much for Hawks. He called Bacall for a serious discussion, warning her about the possible repercussions of her choices, and suggesting that Bogart's lifestyle and marriage made their relationship pointless. He even tried to set up a date with Clark Gable to redirect Bacall's affections, but it didn't work. As Bogart and Bacall's relationship grew stronger against Hawks' wishes, their professional rapport with him deteriorated, especially upon the news of their impending marriage, which contradicted Hawks' expectations. He began to distance himself from them. The Big Sleep premiered in New York City on August 23, 1946, to widespread acclaim, earning a record $84,000 in its first week. The theater operated nearly non-stop due to high public interest. Following this success, director Howard Hawks continued his series of hit films, gaining considerable influence at Warner Brothers. However, he felt restricted by his contract and longed for the creative freedom he had experienced with Howard Hughes during the making of Scarface. This desire for independence prompted him to create Monterey Productions to finance his future projects. In 1948, Hawks began working on Red River, an ambitious western that was compared to Mutiny on the Bounty. The film starred John Wayne and marked the debut of Montgomery Clift. Around this time, Hawks faced personal turmoil as Slim demanded a separation. She was exhausted from taking care of his children, who were nearly the same age as she was, and she had developed feelings for Leland Hayward. In response to these emotional challenges, Hawks often withdrew into silence and isolation. Hawks believed that Red River would be a great project, and casting Wayne and Clift was a smart decision. The film's impressive scale made everyone confident it would succeed at the box office. However, Hawks soon faced financial challenges. Although Red River was expected to do well, it was unlikely to help him immediately due to a costly divorce from Slim, significant back taxes owed to the government, overdue alimony payments, and rising gambling debts. Hawks realized he needed to secure another project quickly. Unexpectedly, Hawks received an offer from Sam Goldwyn, someone he never expected to work with again. Goldwyn was looking for a new project for Danny Kaye and wanted to hear Hawks' ideas. As a result, in 1947, Hawks revisited his earlier film Ball of Fire to create A Song Is Born, which starred Danny Kaye and Virginia Mayo while maintaining the original storyline. This remake shifted its focus to popular music, featuring performances by jazz legends such as Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, and Louis Armstrong, with Hampton and Benny Carter appearing as themselves. Despite his usual enthusiasm for his projects, Hawks felt little interest in this film, ultimately calling it a regrettable and horrible experience. However, he did enjoy the presence of the exceptional jazz musicians on set, which was a true pleasure for him. Hawks clashed with Goldwyn, who demanded that the director enforce racial segregation on set. Although Hawks was not politically progressive and often made insensitive jokes about his Jewish colleagues, including Ball, he refused to allow such extreme racism in his workplace. He formed a strong friendship with Louis Armstrong. After completing the uninspiring shoot, Hawks, exhausted from Goldwyn's constant interference, returned to an empty home since Slim had moved out for good. He wanted to escape both the loneliness of his home and the growing political tensions in Hollywood. While Hawks identified as a conservative, he was not radical. Many of his peers, including Clark Gable, Gary Cooper, John Wayne, Victor Fleming, and screenwriter Jules Furman, were urging him to join the strongly anti-communist Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. Hawks declined, claiming he wasn't even familiar with the organization, but he felt just as opposed to right-wing radicalism and blacklisting as he had been to left-wing radicalism. Hawks was experiencing a significant change in Hollywood. After the war, American audiences were growing bored with the same types of films from familiar directors. Only a few notable filmmakers, like Billy Wilder, Alfred Hitchcock, and Cecil B. DeMille, managed to maintain their independence during this challenging time. Hawks believed that his best opportunity lay at 20th Century Fox, led by his friend Darryl F. Zanuck, who was unique among studio heads for not supporting the blacklist. In mid-August, Hawks left Los Angeles and started his journey on the Queen Elizabeth ship from New York on August 21st, heading to Germany to direct I Was a Male War Bride. This project brought him back together with Cary Grant and introduced Anne Sheridan to the team. During this time, Hawks was shocked to hear about the death of his close friend, Victor Fleming. Fleming had recently faced significant challenges with his latest film, Joan of Arc, and his health had worsened due to poor nutrition, lack of sleep, and excessive drinking, which were exacerbated by the end of his relationship with the film's star, Ingrid Bergman. Fleming passed away from a heart attack at around 59 years old. Meanwhile, Hawks was in talks with Zanuck at Fox about possible future projects. He became interested in Morning Star, a science fiction love story for which Leland Hayward had acquired the rights. Although this project did not move forward, it sparked Hawks' interest in science fiction, eventually leading him to create The Thing from Another World with RKO rather than Fox. Hawks' relationship with Marshall went through some highs and lows. After rumors surfaced that they were going to get married, Marshall made it clear that they weren't even engaged. However, by New Year's Eve, they shared plans to marry on the second anniversary of their first date. Just days before the wedding, which had generated speculation about issues in their relationship, the event was unexpectedly canceled. This was reportedly due to Marshall's frustration with Hawks for not casting her in the major roles she had always desired. There has been much debate about who directed The Thing. While Christian Nyby is credited as the director, many believe Hawks was actually in charge. John Carpenter, who created a remake of the film in the 1980s, was convinced that Hawks directed it, noting the strong camaraderie among the male characters, which is a signature of Hawks' work. Interestingly, Hawks did not actively seek to take credit for the film, despite many believing he deserved it. After the release of The Thing in the spring, Hawks shifted his attention to The Big Sky. He viewed this film as an opportunity to build on the success of Red River, presenting another story about Western pioneers. Although the film received positive reviews, it fell short of financial success, earning only $1.65 million, which was insufficient to cover its high budget. Hawks took the film's shortcomings very personally, feeling responsible for its lack of success. Under his contract with RKO, Hawks also had obligations to 20th Century Fox, where Darryl Zanuck was eager to have him return. Facing financial challenges, Hawks went back to work on Monkey Business, which starred his frequent collaborator Cary Grant. This comedy featured Grant interacting with a chimpanzee, which he found easier to manage than the leopard from Bringing Up Baby. The cast included Marilyn Monroe, Ginger Rogers, and Charles Coburn. Charles Coburn stood out in his role, often stealing the spotlight from Cary Grant. In one memorable scene, Coburn humorously chased Monroe with a soda siphon, trying to decide which part of her impressive physique to aim for. Monroe's role in Monkey Business marked the conclusion of her early symbol image as she transitioned to major stardom with her role in Niagara. While some attributed her discomfort during filming to a disliked dress, it was ultimately due to appendicitis, which was treated right after her scenes were completed. Hawks and Grant were not impressed by Monroe's appeal. Grant commented, "I had no idea she would become a big star. If she had anything unique compared to other actresses, it wasn't obvious at the time. She appeared very shy and quiet, and there was a sadness about her." Grant was certainly right about the sadness. Hawks, on the other hand, unfairly viewed Monroe as goddamn dumb. This made Monroe uncomfortable around the strict and commanding Hawks, but he did acknowledge that her performance was outstanding despite his apparent indifference. Hawks would collaborate with Monroe again in his next film, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Darryl Zanuck initially planned to cast Betty Grable in the film, but her popularity was declining, even as her salary increased to $150,000 per film. In contrast, Marilyn Monroe was stuck in a poorly paid contract with the William Morris Agency, making her available for only $188,000. Despite her rapid rise to fame, she was still considered relatively untested. To ensure star power, Zanuck paired her with Jane Russell, who commanded a fee of $200,000. Although Hawks did not have a musical background, he appreciated music and often included group singing scenes in his films. However, for the musical numbers in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Hawks chose to let Jack Cole, a famous choreographer known for his work with Rita Hayworth, take the lead. Cole, who was both intense and somewhat shy, mentored Monroe during her performances in this film and others. His original vision for Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend involved Monroe wearing a bold outfit. He arranged a rehearsal with her on a black and pink Empire-style bed, where she was adorned with diamonds and had a small horse's tail topped with a tiny diamond horsefly. This concept was ultimately deemed too risque for the final scene. Darryl Zanuck had serious doubts about Monroe's singing abilities and requested a personal audition. However, Monroe showcased her talent remarkably, singing most of her songs in the movie herself. Hawks faced communication challenges with Monroe, which frustrated him because she did not meet his professional standards. Her well-known lateness, insecurity, and reliance on acting coaches posed difficulties for several directors, including Hawks. However, Monroe's performance received early approval from Zanuck, and the studio's backing helped alleviate the issues caused by her behavior. As the film's release approached, the studio ramped up its promotional efforts, highlighted by the memorable cement imprint ceremony featuring Monroe and Russell at Grauman's Chinese Theater, complete with fanfare. This set the stage for Gentlemen Prefer Blondes to become one of Hawks's biggest box office hits. Following this, Hawks fell in love with a younger woman named Dee Hartford, who eventually became his wife. Hartford introduced a new dynamic to their relationship. She was assertive and unafraid to challenge Hawks, which energized him. Although his friends and family had mixed feelings about the marriage, the couple celebrated their union and enjoyed an extended honeymoon in Paris. In Paris, Hawks received a warm welcome. Despite being largely unappreciated in his own country and missing from the latest edition of Who's Who, the French celebrated him as a great artist. Jacques Rivette praised Hawks's genius in that spring's influential French film magazine, Cahiers du Cinéma. In 1955, Hawks took a different direction with Land of the Pharaohs, an ambitious film set in ancient Egypt, featuring Jack Hawkins and Joan Collins. This marked his final collaboration with his longtime friend William Faulkner. Hawks aimed to create a grand epic inspired by Cecil B. DeMille, which was a significant shift from his usual style. However, the film lacked the rich dialogue and human interactions that defined Hawks's best work, leading to a mixed reception. In 1959, he created Rio Bravo. He intended to counteract the elements of High Noon that he found frustrating. This idea resonated with John Wayne, who also had issues with the earlier film. The collaboration between old friends Hawks and Wayne, after years apart, was a big bonus for both. Hawks's decision to cast Dean Martin in Rio Bravo was also a smart move, as he recognized Martin's dedication despite his relaxed persona. When Rio Bravo was first released, it was not regarded as an important artistic work. This was mainly because Westerns, even those made by renowned directors like John Ford and featuring stars like John Wayne, were often dismissed by critics who preferred films with more ambitious themes. The presence of Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson made Rio Bravo seem more like mainstream entertainment than high art. Additionally, director Howard Hawks had a diverse filmography that included many genres but did not tackle what was considered challenging or prestigious material, which led to him being overlooked by critics of that era. However, in the 1960s, critics and film lovers began to reassess Hawks's contributions to cinema and recognize the depth and versatility of his direction. Jean-Luc Godard praised Rio Bravo for its remarkable psychological insight and aesthetic qualities, even calling Hawks the greatest American artist in any field, which is high praise. Today, Rio Bravo is celebrated by modern filmmakers and critics as one of the greatest achievements in cinema. Hawks' personal life was going through significant changes. After the birth of his child, Greg, Hawks' already limited intimate interest decreased further, causing tension in his marriage to Dee. She was not willing to spend her prime years in a relationship without passion. By 1958, their marriage was clearly struggling, leading to their separation in September 1959. Dee quickly filed for divorce, which caused emotional and physical distress for both of them. During Christmas 1959, Hawks reached out to Chance Woodstead to share his long-held feelings for her. Without wasting time, he proposed marriage, even though their relationship had been mostly casual and platonic. Surprised by the proposal, Chance decided to explore their relationship further by moving to Los Angeles to be with Hawks, though they would be living in separate bedrooms. In 1962, director Howard Hawks released Hatari, starring John Wayne as an adventurous animal capturer in Africa. Wayne enjoyed making the film, though the dangerous action scenes made him genuinely anxious about his safety. Hawks was not satisfied with the extensive promotional efforts by Paramount for Hatari, feeling the need to step in to ensure the film received the recognition he thought it deserved. At the same time, the Museum of Modern Art in New York held a retrospective of Hawks' work, organized by Peter Bogdanovich. This event marked the beginning of a renewed appreciation for Hawks' contributions to American cinema. As a result, he started to gain a cult following among film enthusiasts and critics, who began to see him as a director on par with Ingmar Bergman. The debate about Hawks' legacy as an artist grew more intense as he released his final films. Critics, studio executives, and fans passionately discussed his work. In 1964, Hawks returned to comedy with Man's Favorite Sport, casting Rock Hudson in a role originally intended for Cary Grant, who felt he was too old for it. Hawks was frustrated by studio interference, which he believed diminished the film's quality. Although he considered it a decent comedy, he felt it was a missed opportunity. In 1965, Hawks directed Redline 7000, which focused on car racing and starred the then-unknown James Caan. The production faced challenges due to the inexperienced cast and their growing egos, disrupting Hawks' usual collaborative approach. The premiere was a disaster, with the audience laughing inappropriately, disappointing both Hawks and Caan. Despite this, the film later received some positive recognition, including praise from Quentin Tarantino. Hawks's next film, El Dorado, released in 1966 and featuring John Wayne, Robert Mitchum, and Khan, managed to regain some of his earlier success. However, his final film, Rio Lobo, released in 1970 and also starring Wayne, failed to meet expectations. It was seen as a disappointing conclusion to their collaborations, suffering from a lack of energy and uninspired dialogue, which contrasted sharply with the vibrant exchanges typical of Hawks's earlier films. Hawks' rise as a cinematic icon started in France during the 1950s, gained traction in the 1960s, and flourished in the 1970s. It's unclear how much Hawks was aware of his growing fame, but he accepted his role as a mentor and frequently shared insights from his long career in various interviews. He welcomed both fans and aspiring filmmakers, often inviting them to his home for discussions. Peter Bogdanovich was one of the first to seek Hawks' advice, incorporating elements from Hawks' films into his own as a tribute. In October 1972, Hawks received recognition at the San Francisco Film Festival, alongside Raoul Walsh and Rita Hayworth. While Hawks and Walsh had a friendly relationship, Hayworth, whom Hawks hadn't seen in years, left a negative impression due to her visibly poor condition at the event. Some attendees described her as excessively drunk. Despite this, Hawks maintained a strong presence, approachable yet imposing, and he appeared youthful and well-groomed, often wearing aviator sunglasses that enhanced his authoritative demeanor. On April 8, 1975, while The Godfather Part II swept the Oscars, John Wayne presented an honorary Oscar to Hawks, acknowledging his lasting influence on cinema. Despite being nearly 80, Hawks was still considering new projects, including an adventure film about oil rigging. Unfortunately, health issues limited his ambitions. His last major public appearance was in October 1977 at a Directors Guild of America event in Laguna Beach that celebrated his work, where he appeared to be quite well. Sadly, a few months later, Hawks suffered a serious fall at home after tripping over his dog. This accident resulted in injuries that left him incapacitated until friends found him the next day. During his hospital stay, his vulnerabilities became evident. He looked aged and disliked being treated as such. After insisting on returning home, Hawks spent his final days reflecting on his life and expressing love for his daughter Barbara, something he had rarely done before. Hawks passed away on December 26, 1977, surrounded by his children. Honoring his last wishes, his ashes were scattered in the desert, marking the end of a filmmaker who had a profound impact on Hollywood's golden era.